The Zarnathian vessel hovered in low orbit above Earth, its sleek hull shimmering in the planet's reflected sunlight. Inside the observation chamber, Captain Vrexiel folded his elongated limbs, his crystalline eyes flickering as he reviewed the latest surveillance footage. The room hummed with quiet efficiency, the walls lined with glowing panels displaying human activity. Earth's inhabitants were a mystery wrapped in chaos, and the Zarnathians, renowned across the galaxy for their logical precision, had been tasked with deciphering them. They exhibit erratic behavior, murmured First Observer Linux, her voice tinged with clinical detachment. She gestured toward a monitor showing a human crouching to stroke a furry quadruped. The creature, small and seemingly fragile, wagged its tail with frenetic energy. Their interactions with subordinate species are perplexing. What purpose does this contact serve? Vrexiel leaned closer to the display. The human's face radiated what the Zarnathians identified as joy, an emotion they considered a biological inefficiency. It may be a dominance ritual, he suggested. Physical contact to establish hierarchy. Yet the subordinate does not appear distressed, Linux countered. It responds with what might be interpreted as reciprocal affection. This pattern repeats across specimens. The captain straightened, his translucent skin reflecting the pale blue light of the monitors. Continue observations. We require more data before drawing conclusions. Over the following days, the Zarnathians compiled hours of footage. Humans, they discovered, did not limit their tactile behavior to one species. They petted creatures covered in fur, scales, feathers, even those with no discernible appeal. A human was seen stroking a large, predatory cat, while another tenderly held a serpentine creature that writhed and coiled. The Zarnathians' confusion deepened when a human on a forested trail paused to caress a rock, one painted with bright colors and adorned with googly eyes. Vrexiel summoned the senior crew for a briefing. We have underestimated the scope of their behavior, he announced. Humans appear capable of forming bonds with virtually any object or organism. Their motivations remain elusive. Perhaps this is a survival mechanism, Linux offered. By establishing connections, they reduce threats and gain allies. Possibly, Vrexiel conceded. But what are their emotional responses? Why do they display such exuberance during these interactions? Before anyone could respond, an alert chimed. The ship's sensors had detected a solitary human near their cloaked landing pod in a remote field. The opportunity to observe one of the creatures up close was too valuable to ignore. The landing party consisted of Vrexiel, Linux, and two other Zarnathians, their shimmering forms concealed by personal cloaking devices. The human stood near the pod, a young female with a bundle of fur cradled in her arms. As the Zarnathians approached, the creature in her grasp, a domestic canine, twisted to lick her face, eliciting peals of laughter. Vrexiel activated his translator, his voice projecting with the practiced neutrality of an investigator. Human, state your purpose here. The woman froze, her head swiveling in search of the source of the voice. Who's there? She called, her tone tinged with fear but not panic. The dog barked, its tail wagging furiously. Realizing their error, the Zarnathians deactivated their cloaks. The woman gasped as the four tall, shimmering beings materialized before her. To their surprise, she did not flee. Instead, she tightened her grip on the dog and took a cautious step backward. Aliens, she whispered, her eyes wide. Then, almost absurdly, she added, Are you here to hurt us? We mean no harm, Vrexiel replied, gesturing for his team to lower their plasma emitters. We are observers, seeking to understand your species. Her wariness did not fade, but her curiosity seemed to win out. You're studying us? Why? Our directive is to assess the potential of your kind, Linux interjected. Your behaviors are unconventional. The woman blinked, then looked down at the dog in her arms. You mean Max? She scratched behind the creature's ears, and it released a low, contented growl. He's my dog. My pet. Pet, Vrexiel repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. Explain. She hesitated, as if searching for the simplest way to articulate what seemed to her self-evident. He's part of my family. I take care of him, and he takes care of me in his own way. We love each other." The Zarnathians exchanged a series of rapid, silent signals, their version of incredulous whispers. "You derive value from this bond?" Linux pressed. "Of course," the woman said, frowning. "Doesn't everyone?" "No," Vrexiel said flatly. "Such behavior is inefficient." The woman snorted, a sound the Zarnathians' translator labeled as derisive amusement. "Efficiency isn't the point. Max makes me happy. He's a good boy." She kissed the dog's head, and the creature's tail wagged harder. The Zarnathians watched in silence, their analytical minds struggling to reconcile the data before them. Finally, Vrexiel stepped forward. "May I attempt this petting?" The woman's frown deepened. "You've never petted a dog before?" "Correct." "All right, then." She crouched, placing Max on the ground. The dog tilted its head, curious but unafraid. "Go ahead." Vrexiel extended a spindly limb, his fingers brushing the canine's fur. The sensation was unexpected, soft, warm, and alive. Max sniffed his hand, then licked it, causing the captain to recoil. "It excreted moisture upon me." The woman laughed, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the air around them. "That's a kiss. It means he likes you." Linux stepped closer, her crystalline eyes narrowing. "And this liking is beneficial?" "It's everything," the woman said simply. The Zarnathians retreated to their ship with more questions than answers. As the vessel ascended, Vrexiel stared at the planet below, his mind racing. Humanity's strange capacity for connection, their willingness to extend affection beyond logic or reason, was unlike anything he had encountered. It was both baffling and oddly compelling. "They are unpredictable," Linux said, breaking the silence. "Dangerous, even, perhaps," Vrexiel murmured. "But there is strength in their unpredictability. We must understand it." As the Earth shrank to a pinprick of light, Vrexiel couldn't shake the image of the woman and her dog, their bond defying every rule of logic he held dear. It was a puzzle he was determined to solve. The Zarnathian research vessel drifted silently in orbit, its crew engrossed in a growing archive of human behavior. Captain Vrexiel stood at the central observation console, his crystalline eyes narrowing as he reviewed the footage of Earth's inhabitants. The humans' inexplicable compulsion to form bonds with seemingly anything, living or otherwise, was unlike any pattern he had encountered in his long tenure. This behavior wasn't merely common. It was universal among the species. "The spectrum is broader than we anticipated," Linux reported, her voice clipped with precision. She gestured to a montage of humans interacting with an array of subjects. On one screen, a man carefully tended to a cactus, stroking its spines while murmuring softly. On another, a child cuddled a stuffed animal as though it were alive. The parameters of their affection defy logical categorization. Vrexiel studied the images, a faint ripple of frustration coursing through him. They waste time and energy on objects and organisms incapable of reciprocating meaningful contributions. This behavior weakens their efficiency. Yet it persists across all cultures, Linux said, gesturing toward the next set of clips. Ancient Egyptians revered cats as sacred companions. Medieval peasants kept birds as symbols of hope, and modern humans adopted exotic creatures, even going so far as to create lifelike robotic pets. This is not an anomaly. It is fundamental to their nature. A soft chime drew their attention to a live feed. On the surface, a human teenager sat cross-legged in a grassy field, cradling a large snake. The reptile coiled lazily around her arm, its tongue flickering as the girl stroked its smooth scales. Vrexiel tilted his head, his shimmering features reflecting faint irritation. "That creature is neither warm nor capable of producing visible signs of gratitude," he observed. "What compels her to seek its company?" Linux activated the translator's analysis. The human displays what they define as calm. The reptile, though incapable of affection as we understand it, appears content. There is no evidence of distress in either party. Vrexiel stepped back, his thoughts churning. Their mission was to assess humanity's potential as allies or threats, but the depth of this behavior complicated matters. The Zarnathians had long avoided unnecessary interaction with non-intelligent life forms. To them, relationships were transactions of value. Anything beyond that was inefficiency bordering on madness. Yet humans not only embraced these connections, they thrived on them. It may be an evolutionary misstep, Vrexiel proposed, though his tone lacked conviction. A species-wide delusion fostering misplaced bonds. Perhaps, Linux replied, or it is a strength we fail to comprehend. Their debate was interrupted by a signal from the exploration team stationed on the surface. The Zarnathians had attempted an experiment, introducing a group of Earth's creatures into a controlled environment to test their compatibility with Zarnathian methods of interaction. Linux activated the display, revealing the results. The scene was chaos. A Zarnathian observer stood rigid as a fluffy canine circled him excitedly, tail wagging like a metronome. A smaller alien flinched as a parrot perched on its arm, squawking loudly. Most baffling of all was an alien attempting to pet a prickly porcupine, only to recoil as its quills bristled in apparent warning. Their creatures are resistant, Linux noted, her crystalline eyes narrowing in judgment. Incorrect, Vrexiel countered, pointing to the canine. That one displays receptiveness, though its movements are erratic. The humans observing the experiment were less restrained in their reactions, bursting into laughter at the Zarnathians' awkward attempts. One woman stepped forward, crouching beside the canine and calling softly. The animal bounded to her, its exuberance unmistakable. She stroked its fur, her voice soothing, and the dog responded with a low, satisfied sound. Observe, Vrexiel commanded. The human elicits a response we cannot replicate. It is not dominance, yet it commands compliance. How? The humans explained their techniques with a mix of amusement and patience. Petting, they insisted, was not merely physical. It was emotional. It required intent, warmth, and an understanding that transcended species. The Zarnathians, accustomed to rigid logic, struggled to grasp the nuance. We must attempt this again, Vrexiel decided. Their next effort focused on the humans themselves. A young boy volunteered to teach the Zarnathians the basics of petting. He brought with him a small rabbit, its soft fur and quivering nose a stark contrast to the alien's shimmering forms. Hesitantly, Vrexiel extended his elongated fingers, brushing them against the rabbit's back. The sensation was unexpected. The fur was soft, the creature's warmth faint but steady. The rabbit twitched but did not flee, its small body settling under his touch. Vrexiel tilted his head, an unfamiliar sensation stirring in his chest. It is not unpleasant, he admitted. The boy grinned. See? You're doing it right. Linux observed intently before mimicking the action. Her motions were stiffer, but the rabbit accepted her touch without protest. One by one, the other Zarnathians attempted to pet the creature. Some were clumsy, others hesitant, but all experienced the same inexplicable sensation. That is enough for today, Vrexiel declared after a time. As the humans departed with their rabbit, he turned to his team. We are missing something. Their creatures respond to an element we do not yet possess. It is not merely touch, it is connection. Linux nodded, her crystalline eyes reflecting the ship's ambient light. If we are to understand these beings, we must examine not only their actions but their intent. This connection is key. Vrexiel fell silent, his gaze fixed on the planet below. The human's behavior, though illogical, hinted at something profound. Perhaps their capacity for affection was not a weakness, as he had first thought, but a strength of staggering complexity. As the ship hummed with renewed purpose, Vrexiel knew their investigation was far from over. The humans had revealed a facet of their nature that defied understanding, and the Zarnathians would not leave until they uncovered its truth. The Zarnathian vessel hovered silently above the earth, its crew enshrouded in a mix of curiosity and unease. Captain Vrexiel stood at the central console, staring at a live feed of a human bustling through a crowded park. Around her, animals of various kinds lounged, played, or napped. A dog with an oversized tongue trotted beside her, while a bird perched casually on her shoulder, chirping in time with her footsteps. She carries multiple organisms in her orbit, Linux observed, her crystalline gaze reflecting faint skepticism. Their purpose remains unclear. None appear essential to her survival. It is beyond survival, Vrexiel murmured. These creatures provide something intangible, yet it stabilizes her. We must proceed with direct interaction. The Zarnathians had already observed and attempted to replicate human behaviors with limited success. What they still lacked was a deeper understanding of what drove these interactions, a piece of the puzzle that refused to fit into their strictly logical worldview. It was decided a member of the human species would be invited aboard their ship. The chosen individual was a young woman named Kara, who had unwittingly become the subject of Zarnathian fascination due to her extraordinary affinity for all creatures. Her compliance with their invitation, though reluctant at first, was secured when they assured her no harm would come to her or the small dog she insisted on bringing along. When Kara stepped aboard the ship, Max trotting faithfully at her heels, her wide-eyed wonder was palpable. The Zarnathians observed her with unblinking focus, their towering, shimmering forms reflecting her astonishment. "Wow," she breathed, running a hand along the smooth, glowing walls. "It's like something out of a sci-fi movie." Vrexiel stepped forward, his towering frame casting a faintly luminous shadow. "You are here because your kind's behaviors perplex us. Your interactions with other organisms are unorthodox." Kara raised an eyebrow, crouching to scratch Max behind the ears. "You mean petting?" "Correct," Vrexiel replied. "It serves no apparent function, yet it dominates much of your species' interactions. We require an explanation." Kara stood, folding her arms. "It's not something you can explain in words. It's about connection, trust, comfort. You can't just analyze it like data on a spreadsheet." Linux tilted her head. "We have observed, yet understanding eludes us. Perhaps if you demonstrated." Kara hesitated, her gaze shifting between the Zarnathians. They seemed more alien than ever in their rigid, emotionless stillness. Yet she detected something almost vulnerable in their unrelenting focus. She sighed. "All right, but this might be weird for you." She stepped closer to Vrexiel, her hand hovering over the shimmering surface of his arm. "May I?" she asked. Vrexiel hesitated, then inclined his head. Her hand made contact, her fingers running gently along his arm's crystalline texture. The sensation startled him, not the touch itself, but the warmth behind it. Though his kind lacked the nerves to feel physical pleasure, an unexplainable calm seemed to ripple through him. "That's petting," Kara said, smiling faintly. "It's not just touch. It's about showing kindness, making someone or something feel safe." Linux stepped forward, extending her own, translucent arm. "Attempt this on me," she requested. Kara complied, her movements slow and deliberate. As she stroked Linux's arm, the alien's eyes flickered faintly, a Zarnathian sign of deep thought. "It is unfamiliar," Linux said, "yet not unpleasant." Max barked, and Kara laughed softly. "See? Even Max gets it." The Zarnathians observed the exchange, their logical minds grappling with the implications. This behavior, so foreign to their culture, carried a weight they could not deny. It was not mere indulgence. It was a bridge, a connection forged without words or expectations. "This behavior defies logic," Vrexiel admitted, his gaze fixed on Kara. "Yet it holds power. We must understand how this influences your species' resilience." Kara shrugged. "Humans are messy. We feel things, even when it doesn't make sense. But that's what makes us strong. We care. It's not always efficient, but it's what keeps us going." Her words lingered in the air, resonating in a way that logic could not dispute. Vrexiel considered the implications. The human's ability to bond with anything, a living being, a machine, even an inanimate object, gave them an adaptability the Zarnathians lacked. Before Kara left the ship, she approached Vrexiel one last time. You guys might benefit from trying this with each other. It's not just for animals. Connection goes both ways." Vrexiel tilted his head. "You suggest that our kind pet one another?" "Not just pet," she said with a chuckle. Reach out, show compassion. It's not a weakness. It's a strength. As she and Max descended back to Earth, the Zarnathians remained in contemplative silence. The humans had revealed a truth that defied their understanding, yet resonated deeply. Their final report to the Zarnathian High Council included an unexpected conclusion. Humans possess a capacity for connection that transcends logic. It is their greatest strength, enabling unparalleled adaptability and resilience. They can bond with anything, creature, machine, or even concept. This trait makes them uniquely unpredictable and potentially invaluable as allies. In the quiet of the observation chamber, Vrexiel found himself recalling Kara's words. Perhaps the Zarnathians, so bound by logic, had overlooked something essential in their pursuit of knowledge. Connection, he realized, was not inefficiency. It was evolution.